Washington Journal continues.
We want to welcome Samuel Assefa, who is Ethiopia's ambassador to the U.S. Ambassador Samuel, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Let me begin with some of the news on this Sunday morning, and this is a headline in today's New York Times as the Islamists are cornered, vowing not to surrender. Let me just read to the audience some of the details and have you fill in the blanks. In a stunning reversal of fortune, Somalia's transitional government, with the muscle of the Ethiopian military, reclaimed Mogadishu from the Islamist forces that had ruled a large swath of Somalia. Despite the Islamists' repeated vows to fight to the death, their forces evaporated and Mogadishu fell without a shot. Many Somalis saying Saturday that they had hoped that the same thing would happen in other parts of the country. What's happening?
Well, I think we should perhaps just stick to maybe the more current issues, because the general background, to talk in general terms, and the broad background may be too time-consuming. Should I say something in the way of background for you?
Absolutely.
Just the highlights. I think we all know that Somalia has been in a condition of statelessness and suffered all the agonies of an anarchical society for over 15 years, since 1991. By and large ignored by the international community, except rare moments when conflicts flare up. 2 years ago, 2004, in Nairobi, a transitional federal government was established with the assistance of neighboring states, with the assistance of IGAD, with the support of IGAD. But it took some time before real concrete thought went into giving institutional support, giving protection, at least even the legal instruments for protection for the transitional federal government. I think it was in 2005, March, IGAD did make such provisions, but it took a long time for these measures to be put in place and for anything to be put on the ground. Well, it's still awaiting. And this lost period of time, I think, was very sad, because what had happened in the interim phase was that this transitional federal government, which has now the backing of the UN, of the international community, faced enormous challenges in Mogadishu, as you know, with the emergence of the Union of Islamic Courts. Many members of the courts, by the way, were moderates, but the leadership was composed of extremists, hardliners, connections to international terrorism. And this was a very threatening situation. And of course, we know a few months ago it flared up. It was on the radar screen. Suddenly the US, of course, paid a great deal more attention. The world paid more attention to it. And things got worse, despite efforts by the international community and by the US administration to encourage dialogue between the Union of Islamic Courts and the federal transitional government. We tried to engage in dialogue with our neighbors as well, including the Union of Islamic Courts, and things got beyond the pale. So, as you well know, Ethiopian forces accepted the call, the invitation of the transitional federal government, strictly invitation, and assisted in very limited military operations to try to fend against this challenge and to protect the transitional federal government, as is provided by Security Council Resolution 1725, initiated by the US and in fact passed on December 4th. And after December 4th, December 20th, only a fortnight later, attacks in flagrant violation of 1725 by the leadership, by the UIC, on Baidoa, against the transitional federal government, basically threatened its collapse, and then the international community would have no leg to stand on. At this point, we heeded its calls, but this is one side of the story. We have also interests of our own, reasons of national security. I think the two things have to be looked into: our own interests, our national security fears, our reasons of self-defense, if you wish, and defense of the institution of the federal government. Neither is a sufficient condition. Both are necessary nonetheless. Together, they occasioned our intervention, and it was swift. And the pundits expected otherwise. It's too early to say, of course, about the future prospect, but within a few days, the UIC more or less has collapsed organizationally, militarily. They declared that they were dissolved.
And when you say UIC, you're referring to the Islamist forces?
The Union of Islamic Courts. The Union of Islamic Courts. And I want to emphasize, this was a union forged in short order by a variety of different forces. Ideologically, the underpinnings are the desire for an Islamic republic. Ethiopia has nothing against the idea of an Islamic republic per se. We have a large Muslim population. We're very comfortable. I think no other country with a large population, a large Muslim population, and a Christian population is as comfortable on the continent, I think, as we are with religion, with Islam. We're a very tolerant, largely tolerant society for centuries. So we were comfortable with that. It was just that the leadership harbored intention beyond that, a hidden extra Somali agenda, even an extra religious agenda, an internationalist terrorist agenda as well, directed at Ethiopia. And this was a concern for us. So there was something that concerned our stakes, grave threats, and also grave threats to the transitional government. Its invitation then was finally accepted, and the military task is more or less, the mission, if you wish, is more or less now winding down.
We're talking with Ethiopia's ambassador to the United States, Samuel Assefa. He has been in that post for the last year. Our phone lines are open. The numbers will continue to be on the bottom of your screen, divided between Republicans, Democrats, and others. And our topic, Ethiopia's role in Somalia right now. Before we get our first call, I want to ask you about the dynamics in this region. Of course, Somalia and Ethiopia border each other. You're talking about a country, Somalia, which, as you indicated, for more than a decade has not been any strong government leadership. How is Somalia running, and what impact does that have on refugees possibly crossing the border heading into your country?
We have a huge border, 2,000-kilometer border.
And we should point out, Ethiopia is, in population terms, the second largest country in Africa.
It is the second largest population in Africa after Nigeria. 75 million is the last count. We have also, by the way, at some point maybe listeners may be interested, a very large Muslim population as well. It's sinister that the press has sort of tried to build Ethiopia as a Christian state, more or less echoing what the terrorists and those who have called for jihad against Ethiopia have tried to convey. Ethiopia, Christian Ethiopia against Muslim Somalia. But we're evenly divided between Christians and Muslims. We have a larger Muslim population, by the way, than Iraq, than Saudi, than Sudan, combined with, if you wish, Somalia, Eritrea. If you count all the Muslim populations in the region, there are more Muslims in Ethiopia than in all these countries. And you don't hear much of this. This is surprising to many, but that's because it's not been a problem. We are a largely tolerant society, largely tolerant because of the tolerance of Muslims, historically, I must add. We have a very tolerant Muslim society. And so this is not a knee-jerk reaction against Islam per se. There were more specific targets at Ethiopia by international terrorists. And a way of casting the religious issue that allowed it to issue in the form of a declaration of jihad. I don't want to take much time away from the listeners.
We have some viewers who have questions. Our guest, by the way, who is from Ethiopia, but is also a graduate of a number of U.S. institutions, including Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania, and earned his master's and PhD from Princeton in New Jersey. West Hempstead, New York. First caller for the ambassador. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm from Africa. I just have two questions for the ambassador. One is, how can Ethiopia, a country that cannot feed its own people, he engaged in a proxy war. Second one is Somalia has been in chaos for the past 10 years. No African country has gone there to help them out. How come Ethiopia is now fighting a war in Somalia? Why now?
Well, these are many questions. I think only one question admits a single answer. And so I would have to disaggregate your questions. But one term that I should immediately try to take issue with is the use of a proxy war. This is not a proxy war. We're not proxies for anyone. Maybe we can come back to this. I don't want to presume that you are referring to a particular country for whom we are proxies. If you would name it, perhaps I would say more about it. But it is, we are acting on our own national stakes. Our own national security is at issue. Very sadly, Ethiopia has been targeted from the outset by the leadership of the Union of Islamic Courts as the enemy. It has been used as the focal point to rally support for the leadership. Jihad has been declared against Ethiopia repeatedly by this leadership, and then it was also, of course, famously declared by bin Laden himself, saying Somalia will be a safe haven for us and Ethiopia is in the way. That was declared. The leadership also declared its irredentist ambitions of incorporating the eastern region of Ethiopia, inhabited largely by Somali populations. But it's not just these things, not just intentions, declarations, as threatening as these are. Cross-border insurgencies mounted, increased in intensity and scope, and we had every reason to expect, and I think this is incontestable, we had every reason to expect that with the collapse of the transitional federal government, the only source, if you wish, of balance, of stability, of moderation at that point, the situation would get irreversible very, very, very soon. So our interests are at stake. So let's get rid of the proxy part. How can a nation which cannot feed itself do this? Well, I agree, with great difficulty, I would say, with great difficulty, and it's unsustainable. That's why we cannot be there. That's one reason among many why we wish to leave, to withdraw as quickly, as speedily as possible, more quickly and speedily, I think, than many expect to be possible. Days, maybe, I'll use few just to be cautious, but a couple, maybe few more weeks, I don't know, one more, at most. But we wish to leave very quickly. By the way, the Prime Minister was asked how much it has cost thus far. The figure was not, thus far, it hasn't been staggering. He spoke of tens of millions of birr. This was 2 days ago. That would mean several $1 million. Thus far, the campaign has cost not a great deal of, it has not been a very expensive affair, but the humanitarian costs are huge. We cannot bear the humanitarian costs. We cannot alone bear the security costs. We cannot bear the political costs, the diplomatic costs. We expect that neighboring states, IGAD, the African Union, the international community as a whole, and the powers that be, to burden many of these costs along with us. We can be part of that, but we cannot sustain it. You're absolutely right. We are a poor country, and military adventure poor countries cannot afford. We cannot afford it, but sometimes you're forced to do something that is deeply sad, tragic, and seemingly crazy to many. This is thrust upon us. Survival comes before everything else. Sheer national survival. This was the issue for us.
And as protocol would dictate, if I say Ambassador Samuel, that is typical for Ethiopia, for African
It
countries?
is actually exactly correct. Our first names function as last names. It is informal to address somebody by their second name, as it were. More proper to address them by their first, more formal. So Ambassador Samuel, that's
Which is
actually
what
the
we will do
appellation.
here, and we'll go to Washington, D.C. next. Good morning for the ambassador.
Good morning, and
Good
thank
morning.
you for giving me the chance to question and comment the ambassador. Mr. Ambassador, the State Department has put in the list only two persons in the whole country to be suspected of harboring or participating for terrorists. And they say the two persons is in the courts leaders. The person they named himself, he went to Djibouti. There's Interpol. He came back. Nobody bothered him. He went to Saudi Arabia. He came back. He went to Qatar. He came back. He went last time to Abu Dhabi. He came back. While the Ethiopian and the Americans, they claiming that there is terrorists. The courts who made peace in Mogadishu, who did have Mogadishu for 15 years, they want to fight with them for those two men. And the two men went outside of the country 5 times.
Thank you. Any comment?
Well, I mean, very briefly, look, I think to present evidence at some length here would be terribly time-consuming, and I don't think I possess necessarily the relevant expertise to present evidence of this nature. But this is not the position of Ethiopia alone. This is the position also of the United States, although we should be very careful to implicate the United States in Ethiopia's current military engagements. The U.S. never encouraged our military engagements. It discouraged it actively in all my contacts with the U.S. administration. All I heard was restraint. You might make matters worse. You will make matters worse. It does not help. We understand the situation is desperate, but do not engage militarily. That was the recommendation of the U.S. So if this is an intention, the intention here is somehow to draw in the United States into the whole affair. Please, let's be cautious and let's be truthful about it. But the U.S. has intelligence of its own. Central Command is there in Djibouti. It's a public fact. They don't just take our intelligence. Don't underestimate the capacity of U.S. intelligence altogether, please. But there are many public facts concerning the presence of these terrorist forces. Bin Laden made a public statement. Bin Laden made a very public statement. This is our safe haven. Ethiopia is in the way. Jihad on Ethiopia. This needs to be taken into account. But beyond this, I think this cannot be addressed in a very conversational form. I think presentation of evidence requires another kind of format.
Jeffrey Gettleman writes in the New York Times, again, the role of Ethiopia in Somalia, pointing out that Ethiopian officials have said that they plan to withdraw troops in a matter of weeks, but not before neutralizing the Islamists. And the Ethiopian military, with tacit American approval, unleashed a fierce attack against the Islamists last Sunday, bombarding their positions with jet fighters and pushing tanks deep into Somali territory. Since then, the Islamists have been steadily on the run. Their teenage troops no match for Ethiopia's well-equipped modern army. Next call from Columbia, South Carolina. Good morning.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, caller.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jonas from South Carolina, and the question is, some experts question the timing of Ethiopia's action. While they have a local political as well as human rights problems, they take this type of action with Somalia.
What about the timing?
Well, the timing I can explain in terms, I think I have also tried to touch upon the timing. I mean, basically things were getting at a stage where it would be irreversible. We did have a Security Council resolution in place. Nobody acted in time. Nobody could act in time. Everything was belated. And basically the leadership of the Union of Islamic Courts made its intention clear through its action of moving militarily. It was riding the crest of a powerful wave of military victories. That was not arrested. It would have reached a point very quickly. The transitional federal government would have collapsed. Soon, Puntland, Somaliland would be in grave threats. And then we'd have a scenario where we're just going to rely on sheer prayer. We were also increasingly under attack. Increasingly. So there are many things I can say about the timing, but the caller is a compatriot of mine and of a different political persuasion, and this is a wonderful thing. And he's basically echoing something that has sometimes featured in papers here as well, whether Ethiopian intervention is motivated by the desire to detract or distract attention away from domestic problems. The only way I can put to rest these kind of concerns, worries, to the extent that the question is not rhetorical, is to say, look, there are sufficient reasons of national security that motivated intervention, or that motivated intervention, let me correct myself, motivated our acceptance by the legitimate government of Somalia to come to its aid, to defend itself against the threat to its sheer survival.
Samuel Assefa is our guest. He is the Ethiopian ambassador to the United States, based here in Washington. Our next call is from San Antonio. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy New Year, Steve.
Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, I would like to ask you that you said the reason that you're going to Somalia, you have a support of the Somalian government was supported by the UN, and you were saying about the rule and regulation of the UN. But you, the Ethiopians, are refusing to accept the rule that was given by The Hague to the Eritreans. And that ruling was hanging in there, and there are people living in a tent in the Eritrean side because you refuse to accept the UN rule. Is it convenient for you now to say that we follow the rules and this and that? It's a convenient scapegoat that this Somalian government, the part of the Somalian Islamists, have their own government. Which government are we talking about?
Thank you. We should point out Eritrea is another neighbor of Ethiopia.
Another neighbor sadly implicated in the affair. It supported very strongly the leadership of the Union of Islamic Courts. This was another source of threat. It was the combination of international terrorism and an openly hostile Eritrean government which sought to use that relationship with the Islamic courts to destabilize our country, and it has a presence of forces there as well. But again, Ethio-Eritrean issue is probably, Mr. Scully, I'm not correct, is not the topic of our discussion. I'd be very glad if you would invite me another time to talk about domestic issues and so on, but I would rather defer to him to guide us through. I think he wants to talk about the current situation in Somalia and for me to explain my government's position.
And let me ask you about the country itself. 75 million, it's grown about 20 million in the last 10 or 12 years, yet you're a landlocked nation in Africa. How do you survive economically?
Well, I mean, we are a landlocked nation. That is true. We are a landlocked nation since Eritrean independence. We survive economically. I don't think you wish to link the issue of survival directly with being landlocked, although that issue can be discussed, whether it is, in fact, indeed a deterrent to...
or a challenge.
Well, it is a challenge politically to some extent if all our neighboring states, there are many avenues we can use. We are right now using Port Sudan, we are also using Djibouti, and we hope normalization will proceed with Eritrea. We really hope We'll normalize relations with Eritrea, and we will be able to rid ourselves of that problem in a variety of ways. Our desire to normalize relations with Eritrea is not limited to interest, mutual interest we have. They depend on us economically. I think their future, that relationship, we depend on them in certain ways. And it's a very sad, tragic chapter, the war, and we need to put it behind us and move to normalize relations. But I think the challenge of feeding ourselves, beyond feeding ourselves, going on to the business, tending to the business of material welfare, development, this is a huge issue. And of course, democracy and good governance. But these military engagements sometimes come in the way. It's a terrible thing. That is why we don't seek military adventure. Our challenges economically are huge. That's where we want to put our energy. Long-term involvement in Somalia militarily will be detrimental. Detrimental.
Africa and foreign aid, the subject of a piece by Michael Fletcher, page A4 of today's Washington Post, indicating that the Bush administration seeking to double the amount of foreign aid to about $9 billion by the year 2010. And among those receiving aid, more than 20 of the nations that receive most of the U.S. aid, and 10 are in Africa, including the Sudan and Ethiopia, which in 2005 received just over $625 million in U.S. foreign aid. Our next call is from Washington, D.C. Good morning.
And, good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Good morning, Ambassador. I had just a couple of quick comments, and I think the first one is I myself believe that when somebody declares war on another country, they have to be a very credible leader. People have to, or their people have to be able to believe them when they say that this is a national security threat. I wanted to get your comment on quick things. First, as you will very well know, there was a hearing in Congress held by Congressman Donald Payne, where the independent commission handpicked by the Prime Minister in regard to the local election in Ethiopia came out declaring that there was violation. 200 people were gunned down in broad daylight, including children and women. There have been many international agencies who have said the Ethiopian government is very corrupt, has a very systemic and very abusive human rights record. Can you sit there honestly and convince me and the American people that Somali posed a threat when the Prime Minister himself has proven to be one of the most brutal leaders in Africa?
This is just inflammatory rhetoric aimed at just not discussing the issue at hand. We have many issues in our country. One of the things we have to learn to do is to speak rationally to each other, earnestly, with sincerity, exchange views, and red herring and attempting to block discussion by using inflammatory language has never been helpful. Much of what you have said, of course, is eminently contestable. Some of it is fantastically wrong, in my view at any rate. I might, of course, be wrong. But again, why don't we please ask Mr. Scully to reserve another time for us to discuss domestic issues or Ethio-Eritrean. It's up to him. I mean, he controls the show. But why don't we stick to Somalia today? I think we're marching on the same spot. An earlier caller tried to do the same thing. Please, let's turn to Somalia.
And that is what we call the dateline on the program, which is Ethiopia's role in Somalia, in part because of the news of the last couple of days and really the last couple of weeks, as the Ethiopian military has a role with the Islamists in Somalia. Fairfax, Virginia, for Ambassador Samuel. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I'm from Somalia, and I just like to really, I don't know, to be honest with you, where to begin with. To use Frank Rich's book, the greatest story ever told, is a child play, what this man is telling you, Steve. Let me just make my points, a couple of points. One, Somali parliament did not approve for the Ethiopian government's forces to come to Somalia. The Speaker of the Somali Parliament, Steve, which is like the Speaker of the House in the United States comparison, is in Nairobi, Kenya. He's given interview to the BBC, and he's calling the President of Somalia, Mr. Abdullahi Yusuf, whom this man's government is supporting, is a traitor. The next time they go to a session, they will impeach the President and the Prime Minister. And this man is unbelievable, you know. He has no support. The parliament doesn't support them. And he's saying that the Islamic courts were a threat to the Ethiopian government. Steve, they defeated them in a couple of days. The attack forces of the Islamic forces are not a match for the Ethiopian forces with planes, tanks, all kind of anti-aircraft. They don't have that. So there was a gentleman who is the opposition party in Ethiopia parliament when the prime minister told them that they are going to wage the war. He said, this is ridiculous what the prime minister of Ethiopia is telling the Ethiopian parliament, because he said, they are not a threat to us. They are not crossing our border. We know they are not a match for them. So everybody in Ethiopia is figuring out what is the angle that the Ethiopian government is playing this game. Everybody's bewildered.
Thank you. I'll let your comments stand. We'll go to one more call and then turn it back to you. Columbus, Ohio, good morning.
Yeah, I'm from Columbus. I just want to ask the Mr. Ambassador, he's saying what they are doing in Somalia. But I want to tell the ambassador, what are they doing about the Egypt and the river bank, the Nile River, because most Ethiopians are not getting any water there. And
thank you. I'll stop you on that point. A couple of closing comments?
No, very, very quickly. Well, look, the first speaker, I think, many of his remarks were sincere and in earnest, but they concerned domestic affairs, Somali affairs. I really want to emphasize that the dispute between the speaker, who had been in Mogadishu, and who is now, I don't know, some of the reports suggest he may be in Egypt, he may be in Cairo, we don't know. Between him and the Prime Minister and the President of the Federal Transitional Government, this is something that is not ours to sort out. Ethiopia has no role in politically restructuring, reconstituting Somalia. It does not want to intervene in the political affairs of Somalia. In the political affairs of Somalia, in the sense of the shape of the new Somalia, its institutions, sorting out jurisdictions of Somali legitimate institution is not our affairs. It is Somali affairs. We will pull out very quickly as soon as the military operations are completed. We don't think it's up to us to maintain also protection, to provide protection, to police Somalia after that. It's beyond our powers. It's for the international community to do. We have a real chance here, though. Somalia, nobody can contest. The doomsayers, all the pundits, they cannot contest that there is a real chance for peace and security. Beyond that, even nation building and democracy that has been opened up. We have no ironclad guarantees. Why don't we seize on the moment? It would be criminal, I think, not to focus on what is good right now. There is an opportunity. Our departure will only help this opportunity. Ethiopian troops won't be around to blame. We'll always support politically, diplomatically. Otherwise, we're just going to be one voice of many in the international community. But let us focus on the new opportunities opened up for Somalia finally to have a representative, inclusive, legitimate order that has the allegiance of the entire Somali population. It's very sad that people are just focusing on the negatives and not, you could be asking, inclusion. Let the transitional government be more inclusive. It should be more inclusive. It has declared its intentions of being more inclusive. And it has to be more inclusive if it is going to survive. Ethiopian presence will not help against the threats of future insurgencies. What will help is legitimacy, a legitimate order. For that, you need inclusiveness, dialogue, representation, and the assistance of the international community in its endeavors, humanitarian, capacity building, etc. And just may I make a call? There is a chance here. An opportunity has been opened up to make an exit from anarchy and suffering. Why don't we look into that and try to capitalize on this opportunity?
Samuel Assefa, who is Ethiopia's ambassador to the United States, a graduate of Princeton University. He's held a number of postings with the Ethiopian government over the last decade or so. We thank you for joining us. We do hope you'll come back again.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Scully. Thank you.
Coming up in just a moment, with the death of Saddam Hussein, what's next for the Iraqi people and what led to his execution? We'll talk about that in just a moment. But another scene from the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, the body of President Gerald R. Ford, our 38th president, who arrived yesterday for services in the evening, and some scheduling information for you. If you're in the Washington, D.C. area, you can visit the rotunda of the Capitol all day today and all day tomorrow. Funeral services will take place Tuesday morning at 10:30 East Coast time at Washington's National Cathedral. Among those who will be speaking, President Bush and former President Bush. And then the casket will depart for the Ford Museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where the public in Michigan can view on Tuesday evening and part of Wednesday morning. Services on Wednesday at the Grace Episcopal Church. Among those who will be speaking Wednesday, historian Richard Norton Smith, former President Jimmy Carter, and Gerald Ford's Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. And then burial at about 3:30 Wednesday afternoon at the hillside just north of the Gerald Ford Museum. We'll continue to show you live pictures from the U.S. Capitol. You're watching C-SPAN's Washington Journal. It's Sunday, December 31st.